Whenever I hear leaders and entrepreneurs talk about great employees, there is one specific property that they show in their behavior that makes them great employees. And what is that? It's a specific way of approaching decisions, taking decisions, and also managing the risks around it. Well, we all know that nothing is ever going to run perfect, but sometimes there's specific things that are annoying and you see a potential for improvement. Many people go like, eh, and then they continue their daily job and they just let it go. Some people will be annoyed by it, but the annoyance will just switch into some kind of resignation and then they just live with it, and they live in an inferior system where there's so much potential for change, but they just wait for somebody to come around and someday maybe fix it so that it's also going to be better for them. And this is where great employees make a difference. Great employees are those who are proactive in their behavior. They take those potentials that they see at heart and they go in like, let's see what we can do. So whenever they see something that can be improved within themselves, they are very quick to take action, to try out what they could do. But even if it's not within themselves, they are even the ones who are thinking it through, who have ideas and generate ideas and communicate about ideas on how to fix things. They don't only attack the problem itself though, they even go one step further. Well, it's one thing to solve one specific problem, let's say in one project. Something has gone wrong and you fix it. Great employees will nudge it up a little bit. They ask themselves the question, what is the logic of the problem occurring in the first place? And how don't we only fix the problem, but how do we fix the logic of working, the system, the project, so that this problem won't ever occur again? So what they're doing is they are setting up for impulses for the improvement of the organizational system. And thus, here and there and here and there, they will have just sometimes very teeny tiny but effective improvements. But if you then have 100 times improvements that are just 0.1%, well, very soon you have 10% improvement, right? And it goes on and it goes on. So they don't stay on the problem layer and solve the problem, they solve the organization so that the problem won't occur in the first place. How do they do that? Well, the first thing that they do is typically they go for backwards thinking, and that is called results-oriented thinking. So what do? Well, you think about how should it be when it's ready, when the result is there. And then they calculate backwards the step that would need to be taken in order to reach that final goal. So they don't go from where I am and how could I get rid of that task as soon as possible. They ask the question, what is it that we need to have so that something is really checked off and done? Many employees that don't perform will just do something to check off the task from their to-do list. But then when you look closer, it's not ripe, it's not perfect, there's some edges that are not right, and there's frustration popping up. Because their goal was getting rid of the task as soon as possible. Goal orientation turns that around, and the goal is to fix it in a way that the end result is reached and even the organization is improved along the way. So the backwards thinking is the number one of the very important aspects of getting things done and being a great employee. The other thing is the critical context thinking. So what does that mean? They do not only think about their domain and like, is this my responsibility, is it my duty, or is it not? They go in and go like, well, it's in my organization, I'm affected somehow, so whether I want it or not, it's my problem anyways. And even if it's not my problem, I want to fix it because I want to contribute. So that's a proactive moment again. And what they do is they do not think about themselves as somebody living in a vacuum, but they know that there's interconnected processes. They know there's touch points to other teams, how they connect, and there's work flowing from somewhere to them and then going somewhere else. They think about the organization as an interconnected system. And what they do is they think about how to optimize the touch points, how to optimize the team collaboration in a way that they also come up with the critical thinking. There's a great example where Elon Musk on stage tells that in the Tesla factory he was wondering, why do we have that part built in? And he went to one team and said, why do we have that part? And they said, well, it's that guys from the other team who said it needs to be in there. So he went to the other team and the other team said, well, it's them who wanted that in that. Then he went back again like, so you don't need that? Yeah, we don't need that. Went back, so you don't need that as well? No, we don't need that. So why do we build it in? So in the organization, due to communication that has gone wrong, there has been a problem. And Elon Musk was critical enough to challenge every kind of decision that he didn't understand. And not only in a segment where he was an expert, but using the other team members, using the colleagues in order to make sure that this is really an understandable basis that he generates on which he can make decisions then. And he takes the colleagues along to make that decision with him. Now, every decision that you make can have downsides. There's always an effect and there's side effects, right? Now, it's a part of great behavior in an organization to be aware of any kind of risks that come with your decisions that you make. And that risk can be typically categorized in time risks, so we could be late with a project if we do something. It could be quality concerns and risks like we're not getting it right or the quality is not sufficient in the end. And it can be cost concerns. So this is the typical three things that we try to optimize. Those risks can be direct, so if we change something, it will impact the cost of the project or the quality, but it also can be indirect. So one example that we see in IT a lot is that you decide for an IT framework that has not the best prospect for the future, and 5 years later you need to kind of rebuild the whole IT architecture behind it because, well, the framework support is running out. And then you have a huge pile of costs on your hand that you shouldn't have had if you just picked a little bit wiser and optimized for like the best decision in terms of quality and long-term costs, and not for getting the cheapest framework and optimizing for the short term. So with all the risks, there's a short-term assessment, there's a long-term assessment, and there's interconnectedness. Great employees have that in their analysis. And they have a first segment where they understand what the problem is, they think it through, they go with the results-oriented thinking, they calculate back from the desired outcome to where they are today and what needs to happen. They know who they need to get on board and how they could do that is something that they reflect on. And then they have the critical context thinking where they reflect on how it could go. They have the risks, not only the direct ones, but also indirect ones on the agenda. And based on that one, they will make sure that they do a very, very quick decision. The more the decision is changeable and modifiable in the future, the fewer time they will invest in thinking it through and coming up with a decision. Because, well, then just prototype it, try and optimize along the way. So if it's a decision that you once take and then over years you're set, they really think it through in detail. If it's a decision that you just can change and they are not investing that much of time. Once they have the decision made after the thinking it through, they'll act on it and they make sure that it's implemented. Because, well, you need to make decisions well and quickly, but then the most important thing, more important than the decision itself, well, you need that, but more important is taking action. Only if you take action and implement it in a way that it actually works in the end, only then the whole exercise had any value. So maybe reflect now, what are the things that you see going wrong, and where could you be proactive to be an even better employee and to be an even better leader, to make sure that the organization is improving overall, which will mean that your organization is more successful, which makes employees also more successful. So have fun looking for the opportunities.